Welcome, dear listener, to Driftwood Stories, where the moon knows all the hidden doors, and slippers wear thin from dreams walked nightly in secret. Tonight we enter a castle wrapped in velvet hush, where 12 sisters sleep behind locked doors, yet each morning their shoes are worn through, the soles frayed and the leather soft with mystery. Where do they go? What dances pull them through midnight's veil? This is a tale of music without sound, of silver forests hidden beneath stone, and a quiet soul who watches, listens, and follows where others could not. So draw the blankets close, let the hush of the castle settle around you, and walk with us now to where the floorboards whisper and the candles flicker low. This is the 12 Dancing Princesses. Chapter 1. Shoes in the Morning. The castle stood quiet on the hill, its towers tipped with mist, its gardens still heavy with dew and the breath of wild thyme. From a distance it seemed ordinary, a place of bells and windows and stone, but inside something curious had taken hold. Each morning when the servants drew open the doors to the princesses' chambers, they found a strange and delicate puzzle. 12 pairs of slippers, soft, silken and gleaming with tiny pearls, were worn through at the soles, not scuffed by accident, not dulled by pacing the halls, but ruined as if danced upon all night, until every seam sighed with exhaustion. And yet the princesses were always there, tucked beneath linen covers, breathing slow and deep. Their faces were calm, their lashes undisturbed, and their gowns neatly folded on chairs. "What do they do?" the king would ask, pacing the same path in the same stone hall. "Where do they go?" But no one could answer. They locked the windows, they barred the doors. And still, each morning the shoes were found, threadbare and glimmering, with dust not of this world. So the king, a man of rules and riddles, offered a prize. "Any man who can solve this mystery," he said, "shall marry one of my daughters, his choosing, and inherit part of the kingdom." But there was a price. "You have 3 nights," he added. "Fail, and you disappear." Many came, princes, counts, knights in cloaks of crushed velvet, men with clever eyes and boasts like banners. And one by one they vanished. In a quiet village not far from the castle, an old soldier sat by a fire. His boots were worn, his hair greying at the temples. He carried a bag of simple things, a knife, a comb, a bit of bread, and the memory of roads walked long ago. He had fought in distant wars, where the only reward was to return alive. Now he sought no fortune, no crown, only rest. But when he heard of the mystery, of the princesses and their shoes, something stirred in him, not ambition, not greed, curiosity, and a softness for things unsolved. The soldier arrived at the castle one autumn afternoon. The sky was bruised with cloud, and the garden trees were shedding gold. He asked to speak with the king. They laughed at first. He wore no jewels, no titles, no sword at his side, but the king had grown weary of watching the bold vanish without a trace. So he agreed. "You'll be given a room beside the princess's chambers," said the steward. "You may not speak with them, you may not enter their rooms. Watch if you like." "But watch alone," the soldier nodded. He was used to watching. That evening he was served a fine supper. The fire was lit, the bells rang the 9th hour, and the princesses were led one by one to their rooms, each draped in silks the colour of evening, rose, gold, lavender, grey, deep indigo. The eldest walked with a quiet pride. The youngest looked back at the soldier once, just once, with eyes wide as dusk. Their doors were closed, the locks turned, the castle settled, and the soldier sat in silence, listening. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. Inside, only the ticking of the clock. He waited and waited, but the night passed with nothing but shadow. When morning came, he rose, walked the corridor, and found 12 pairs of slippers, placed neatly outside each door, every sole worn through, fringed with strange glittering threads, that vanished when touched. That night the soldier prepared again, but before the bells rang, an old woman appeared at his door, her back bent, her shawl thick with leaves. She smiled. "Watching them won't help," she said. "They're clever, the 12, and you'll sleep before you see a thing." The soldier stood slowly. "Then I won't sleep." She chuckled. "You will. They know how to pour a cup just so." Then from her bundle she drew 2 things: a small cloak, soft and dark as raven feathers, and a sprig of herb, dried and sweet-smelling. "This," she said, holding up the sprig, "will keep you from their dreams, and the cloak, that will keep you from their eyes." He took both, nodded once, and that night, when the fire burned low, he did not drink their wine. He tucked the herb behind his ear, draped the cloak over his shoulders, and when the castle fell quiet and the doors were locked, he waited, and this time he would see. Chapter 2. The Silent Watcher. The fire dimmed low, its last light curling along the stones like a whisper. In the stillness, the soldier sat beside the hearth, his cloak drawn about his shoulders, soft as owl's wing, dark as the hush between bells. Behind his ear, the dried herb from the old woman nestled in place, its scent faint but steady, like pine needles warmed by sun. He had not drunk the wine the princesses offered. He had smiled politely, then set it aside, and now, beneath the watchful beams of the ceiling, he waited. The castle held its breath. Then a sound, a gentle rustle, the clink of a latch, soft, deliberate footsteps. From behind the doors came motion, carefully hidden. But there, the soldier stood, slow and silent. The cloak around him shimmered, not with colour but with absence. He vanished from view, like a thought swallowed by night. At the stroke of midnight, a click echoed faintly down the hall. 12 doors opened in perfect silence. One by one the princesses emerged. They did not wear nightgowns now. They wore dresses, each one stitched with moonlight and thread the colour of dream. The eldest in silver and shadow, the youngest in pearl and pale rose. Their slippers gleamed anew, as if the morning's wear had never happened. They looked at each other, not with fear but with practised ease, and then the eldest knelt by the hearth and lifted the rug. Beneath it, a trapdoor, carved from old wood, ringed in runes so faint they barely whispered. She lifted it, revealing a narrow staircase descending into shadow. Without a word, they began to descend, one by one, each step a memory lost to the waking world. The soldier followed, invisible. He stepped gently, his breath held like a candle. The stair creaked once, but no one turned. They did not know he was there. The staircase spiraled down, deep beneath the roots of the castle. The air grew cool, damp. The walls shimmered with lichen and old stone. At last the steps opened into a vast underground wood. A forest that could not exist, but did. Its trees were tall and silver, each leaf like a shard of moonlight. They glowed softly in the darkness, as if lit from within. The princesses walked beneath the branches, their slippers brushing silver moss, their laughter hushed but bright, like wind chimes caught in a dream. The soldier moved silently among them, watching, listening. He saw the way the middle sisters nudged each other and giggled, how the second youngest tied her laces twice before walking on, how the eldest looked back now and then, as if sensing something not quite right. Still, they walked on. Beyond the forest they came to a lake, black as ink, still as glass. 12 boats waited at the shore, each carved from a single piece of dark wood, each with a waiting oarsman in fine, silent clothes. They said nothing. They only held out gloved hands as the princesses climbed aboard. The soldier slipped into the last boat, careful not to tilt the vessel. He sat at its bow, crouched low. As the oars dipped into the water, the boats drifted soundlessly across the lake. Above, stars shimmered, not in sky, but in the cavern roof far above. Reflected in the black water, they shimmered like coins on velvet. Across the lake they went, to the far shore, where a palace stood lit with 1,000 glowing lanterns, each swinging gently in a breeze that did not touch the trees. Music drifted from within, soft, strange, unearthly, not pipes or strings, but something deeper, something like wind through bone, like stones singing under water. And yet the princesses smiled. Their faces warmed in the light. Their eyes danced before their feet did. Inside, the floor was made of crystal. The walls shimmered with ivy that sparkled like frost. At the centre, a ballroom, vast and waiting, and the moment the girls stepped inside, the music grew brighter, faster, joyful. 12 figures met them, not men but dancers made of shadow and starlight, masks on their faces, gloves on their hands, and the princesses danced, not as girls pretending, not stiffly as at royal banquets, but freely, hair flying, shoes spinning, laughter bubbling through the air like warm cider. The soldier watched from the edges, sat quietly by a column carved with vines, and though he had seen war and loss and silence deeper than stone, he smiled, because here, beneath the world, 12 sisters danced to forget something, or to remember. Hours passed, shoes wore down, hems frayed, the music slowed, and one by one they returned to the boats, breathless, blinking, not sad, not quite, just tired. They crossed the lake in silence, walked again beneath the silver trees, the leaves now still, back up the stairs, through the trapdoor, into their rooms. The soldier followed last, closing the door behind him with care. He placed the worn slippers by the fire, then sat again, as if he'd never moved. When the bells rang in the morning, the servants gasped to see the shoes, again worn to threads. The king frowned, but the soldier only smiled faintly. He had seen, and tomorrow he would follow again. Chapter 3, The Silver Forest and the Black Lake. The next night came soft and slow. The wind carried a hush through the garden trees, and the moon drifted like a pale coin across a cloud-brushed sky. Inside the castle, torches flickered along the corridors, casting thin golden light onto old stone walls. The soldier ate little. He spent the day listening to the scuff of slippers across tile, to the laughter of princesses in the walled garden, to the silences between. They spoke little to others, but often to each other, in glances, in half-words, in a rhythm that no outsider would notice. He watched them closely, not with suspicion, but with interest, as one might study a river's flow to understand where it runs. That night, when the bells chimed, he once again feigned sleep beside the hearth. And once again he tucked the old woman's herb behind his ear and draped the cloak over his shoulders like moonlight stitched into cloth. Midnight. 12 doors opened. The princesses emerged, dressed once more in their finest silks, each gown more dreamlike than the last. No servants, no witnesses, only them. The eldest lifted the hearthrug, and down they went, down the spiral stair, hidden beneath stone and silence, and he followed. The descent was deeper this time, or so it felt. The air grew cooler. The scent of earth thickened, damp stone, old roots, and a strange sweetness, like crushed lilies and iron. When they stepped once more into the forest, the soldier paused. Even though he had seen it before, it still stole his breath. The trees were tall and silver, their bark shining like polished bone. The leaves shimmered with a light of their own, not fire, not moonlight, but something quiet and ancient. The ground was soft beneath his boots, covered in moss the colour of starlight and laced with tiny blossoms. That blinked open and shut like dreaming eyes. The princesses laughed more freely here, their movements lightened, their shoulders relaxed. No watchful eyes, no courtly posture, just sisters in a world that belonged only to them. They passed through 3 woods that night. The first was silver, cool and bright, where the air sang faintly with something close to memory. The second was golden, trees of warm glow and gilded bark, where the soldier could smell honeysuckle and toasted spice. And the third was dark, not with evil, but with quiet. The trunks here were black as obsidian, and the leaves shimmered violet in the dim light. In this final wood, the princesses grew solemn. Their voices dropped to whispers. Even the youngest walked slower, glancing sideways toward the trees. The soldier wondered what they remembered here, what they left behind. At the end of the third wood, the land sloped downward to the edge of the lake. It spread before them like ink poured across glass, black and still, reflecting the stars that glowed in the cavern's high ceiling above. A sky beneath the earth. 12 boats waited again. No voices from the oarsmen, only the sound of wood brushing softly against the shore. The soldier slipped into the last vessel, hidden as before, and across the lake they rowed. He watched the sisters by lantern light. They leaned close, shared quiet jokes, rested their chins on their hands as they gazed across the water. The youngest trailed her fingers over the edge, leaving ripples that broke the stars' reflection in trembling patterns. The oars moved in perfect silence. No creak, no splash, only the pulse of water parting and rejoining in the wake. Then came the palace. Even from across the lake it glittered. No straight lines, only curves and arches and spirals, as if it had been grown, not built. Its towers were wrapped in ivy that sparkled like frost. Every window glowed with soft amber light, and hundreds of lanterns, some floating, some perched on crystal trees, cast rings of warmth across the black water. The boats landed softly. The princesses disembarked, smiling already as the music drifted out to meet them. The soldier stepped onto the shore. The grass was soft as velvet. The palace doors opened not with force, but with welcome. Inside, the ballroom shimmered. The walls were smooth stone flecked with gold. The pillars reached high and twisted like branches. The floor, a circle of crystal laid in mirrored rings, reflected everything like water. And at its centre, 12 figures waited, not quite human, not quite ghost. Their masks were carved of bone and gem. Their cloaks flowed like fog, and their gloves shimmered as if stitched with stars. The princesses ran to them, not fearfully, but with joy. As the music swelled, they danced. Oh, how they danced! The soldier found a place by the wall, in the shadow of a great potted tree that bloomed blue flowers in silence, and he watched. They spun and turned, leaping, laughing, falling into rhythm as easily as breath. Some danced wildly, some moved with grace, some closed their eyes as they twirled, as if chasing something only they could see. And, for the first time, the soldier wondered if this was enchantment at all, or simply escape. One of the masked dancers offered his hand to the youngest. She looked up, hesitated, then smiled. For a moment there was a sadness in her expression, a flicker of something she couldn't name, but then she stepped forward, and the dance began again. Time passed strangely here. The music slowed, the lights dimmed to candle flickers. The air grew heavier, like the hush before dawn. Shoes wore thin, hems dragged the floor. The princesses, one by one, leaned on each other. Their laughter softened to breath. The masked dancers bowed, their movements graceful, reverent, and the sisters turned back. They walked slowly to the boats. None spoke. Across the lake, through the forests, black, gold, silver, up the stairs, back through the trapdoor, and into their beds. The soldier followed, quiet as ever. He set a fallen branch from the golden forest in his satchel, one silver blossom from the dark trees, and then sat, once more by the fire, cloak folded in his lap. As the first birds began to sing, he smiled, because some truths are not shouted, they are followed, step by step, in the quiet, beneath the world. Chapter 4, Dancing Until Dawn. The third night came gently, as if the castle itself were sighing toward sleep. Clouds passed over the moon like slow waves, and the air in the garden smelled of apples and turned leaves. The lamps along the outer halls flickered with a steady hush. And inside, the king paced alone, his brows furrowed in thought. 12 daughters, 12 pairs of shoes worn thin, 12 questions unanswered, but tonight would bring answers. And not the kind he expected. In his chamber the soldier sat in silence, the old cloak already draped over his shoulders. the sprig of dried herb tucked in place. He no longer questioned what he saw. He no longer wondered if this was illusion or spell. He understood, in some quiet corner of his mind, that the truth was more delicate than sorcery. Some enchantments are made not with wands, but with longing. Some secrets are not hidden with locks, but with rhythm. Midnight came. The doors opened. The princesses stepped into the corridor, their gowns flowing, their hair braided with pearls and ribbon. But now he saw them not as a mystery, but as sisters. He noticed the second eldest pause to steady the third, her hand brushing gently at her back. He saw the fifth turn her head toward the youngest, whispering something to make her smile. Even the eldest, so composed, tilted her chin slightly toward the others, not with command, but with care. They were not hiding joy, they were sharing it, between themselves, beneath the world. Down the spiral stairs they went, the stone walls blurred with soft moss. The air shimmered faintly, as if the space between worlds had worn thin, and again the soldier followed. They walked through the three forests once more, silver leaves above their heads, golden light brushing their cheeks, violet shadows pooling at their feet. He walked beside them unnoticed, but no longer as a stranger. He listened to the youngest softly humming a tune, to the sixth sister laughing when her shoe caught a root, to the fourth pausing to gather a fallen blossom and tucking it into her sleeve. These were not steps of rebellion, they were rituals, little freedoms danced in the dark, where no eyes judged and no walls whispered rules. At the lake the boats waited, but this time he did not sit at the edge. He sat beside the youngest. She never saw him. His cloak held firm. But when the boat rocked slightly, she looked out over the water and whispered, "It feels different tonight." The soldier smiled. He said nothing, but he understood. The palace shimmered as before. Lanterns swayed. Music drifted like wind across stone. The masked dancers stood waiting in the crystal hall. The princesses entered, but their steps were slower now, not with fear, but with fullness, as if the music had already begun to play in their hearts. They danced, not frantically, but as if pouring water from one vessel to another, smooth, steady, bright. Each turn was familiar, each smile earned. They danced until their cheeks flushed, until their shoes softened, until the echo of the day had been brushed away completely. The soldier leaned against the ballroom's carved columns, watching the youngest spin with gentle laughter, the eldest sway in time with a figure in a mask of onyx. But this time he looked not just at them, but at the space between. The music did not rise and fall with magic. It swelled from something older, need, memory, the longing to be elsewhere, if only for a while. As dawn crept through the cracks of the cavern ceiling, the dancing slowed, the masked figures bowed, the lanterns dimmed, and the princesses, one by one, collected their slippers, held their skirts, and stepped back from the edge of dream. They crossed the lake, walked the woods, climbed the stairs, back through the trapdoor, back into silence. The soldier sat by the fire, the silver blossom from the violet wood resting in his lap. He placed it carefully beside the golden branch in his bag. Proof, but more than that, reminders of a world he had walked in silence. When morning came, he stood before the king. The court gathered, expectant and tense. The king leaned forward. "Well, speak." The soldier bowed once, then said gently, "Your daughters go dancing each night. In a kingdom beneath the ground, across silver woods, over black water, to a palace where music never ends, murmurs spread like ripples." The king narrowed his eyes. "You lie." But the soldier reached into his bag and drew out the branch of gold, the blossom of silver, and a thread from one slipper, still laced with dew and dust that smelled of old songs. And the youngest princess gasped, because she knew. The king turned to his daughters. "Is it true?" The eldest stepped forward. She did not bow, but she looked him in the eye. "Yes," she said, "it is." He was silent, and then he asked the soldier, "Which one will you marry?" The soldier looked at them all, at their tired eyes, at their folded hands, at their unspoken stories. And he said, simply, "I would not choose without being chosen in return." The princesses looked to one another, and the youngest, with her laughter like song and her slippers still in hand, smiled. "I choose," she said. Chapter 5. The Truth in the Light. The castle stirred in slow surprise. The court, so used to whispers and watchful rules, stood silent as the youngest princess took the soldier's hand. No fanfare, no trumpet, only the soft sound of her slipper on the stone floor, and the hush of the world listening. The king sat still, his gaze flicking between them. He was a man of order and law, but even law, when faced with truth spoken gently, must bow. "You have named the secret," he said to the soldier, "and you have broken no rule. The choice is yours." The soldier turned to the youngest again, his voice steady. "I came not seeking a crown, only the answer to a question that others would not ask quietly enough." "And I," she replied, "have danced through 3 forests, and across 1 black lake, and never once was I seen, until now, in time, the castle shifted around them. There was no great wedding, no golden feast, only a quiet ceremony in the chapel garden, beneath flowering trees and birdsong, with shoes worn soft from walking, not hiding. The youngest princess, who had once tied ribbons around her ankles before midnight, now walked each day in sunlight and found joy in mornings, not because she had been caught, but because she had been known. The soldier, now husband, never once asked her to stop dancing, but she danced only when she wished, and some nights, when the moon was silver and the hearth crackled low, she would take his hand and whisper, "Let's go just once more." And they would walk, not to the trapdoor, not to the shadowed stairs, but to the courtyard where jasmine bloomed in pots, and stars blinked above. She would step into the hush of the night, and twirl, barefoot in the grass, as he watched with quiet eyes, and the contentment of a man who had learned, the beauty of not needing to chase. Her sisters changed too, no longer guarded, no longer hiding the light in their laughter. They each, in their own way, took paths they had dreamed of quietly, through countless midnight steps. Some stayed in the castle, teaching music, weaving tapestries, wandering the gardens with books in hand. Others left, carrying with them not shame, but stories. They wrote to each other often, and once a year, when the first moon of autumn rose full and golden, they would all return and dance together in the forest clearing. beneath the high trees, not because they had to, not because of enchantment, but because it felt like memory and sisterhood and joy stitched gently through time. The soldier kept the branch of gold and the silver blossom in a glass jar beside his desk, not as trophies, but as keepsakes from a world that had taught him what it meant to truly see. He never spoke much of the enchanted palace, he never described the masked dancers or the crystal ballroom, but now and then, when a child asked him why he always checked behind rugs and tapped gently at hollow walls, he would smile and say, "Sometimes there are doors beneath our feet, and sometimes they're not meant to be opened, just noticed." The king, older now, looked on with something between wonder and regret. He no longer questioned the worn shoes. He walked slower through the halls, spoke less, but once, when the wind howled through the tower and brought with it the scent of linden wood and distant thunder, he stood at the window and whispered, "They were never escaping, were they?" And no one answered. But perhaps he did not expect one. In time the trap-door beneath the hearth grew stiff, its runes faded, the steps beneath gathered dust, and the path beyond the woods and lake and crystal hall slipped back into dream. But those who had walked it remembered not the danger, not the spell, but the sound of their own feet, carving paths through shadow and song. And so it is told that 12 princesses once danced each night beneath the world and wore through their shoes in pursuit of something no one could name, that a soldier came, not to conquer, but to understand, that he listened where others boasted and followed gently where others forced, and that, in doing so, he named a truth that had only ever lived in silence, the truth that not all secrets are shame, that some stories, when told in the right light, are not meant to end, but to begin again, step by step, beneath stars and soft music and the hush of kind understanding.